dollars worth of economic assistance that helps unlock financing from the IMF, from the World Bank, from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, to begin this process of rebuilding. We have an important bilateral meeting and then a meeting virtually with our colleagues from the Coalition of the Willing EDO.
There you have it, guys. Canada is announcing $2.5 billion to Ukraine. Merry Christmas, everybody. Today is Monday, December 29th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. I have this one story I really want to cover with you guys. And like I said, Canada just announced another $2.5 billion for Ukraine. And honestly, before anybody labels this heartless or isolationist, I think we need to be clear about what this conversation actually is. This isn't really about abandoning Ukraine. It's about whether Canada still has a governing class capable of setting priorities when its own economy is weakened, its productivity is collapsing, its fiscal room is shrinking, and when Ottawa can move billions of dollars overseas faster than it can fix its own trade barriers that it has with, let's say, the US, or its housing shortages, or energy infrastructure at home, I think Canadians are entitled to ask a couple of questions, And honestly, I don't think asking those questions is disloyal. I think it's the bare minimum that we can really expect from any form of governance. And the article really just gets into it doesn't really cover much. It just goes into what Carney spoke to President Zelensky about, and what they're claiming the money is for Ukraine to be able to stable off so that they can take out new loans from the IMF. Because the IMF is such a great place to take out loans, right? It's not a loan shark in and of itself, right? The IMF is such a great place. Every country that's ever taken money out of the IMF or gotten money funds from the IMF was always so grateful. Guys, this is just one series of moves that Ottawa is making towards some kind of abyss. We're just throwing money into a bottomless pit, essentially. And I think for me, there's a couple of main questions. One of my biggest questions before getting into the article itself is, like, why now, right? And like, what are we not funding at home, or what could we have funded for $2.5 billion at home right now, given the current state of affairs in Canada? Like, Canada is committing $2.5 billion in new economic support, while Canadians are being told to tighten our belts, right? But our competitiveness is just kind of like flying out the window, right? We have insanely weak productivity. Our housing is strained. Our health systems are catastrophe. We got a guy that died in the ER because he waited for 8 hours in the ER. They gave him Tylenol pill to calm down. This is what we're dealing with in Canada. Quebec doesn't have enough doctors. Not only do they not have enough doctors, the doctors are leaving Quebec. But we have $2.5 billion, the federal government, to send to Ukraine so that they can be credit worthy. I think this is like a serious question we really need to be asking ourselves. Like, our domestic capacity is eroding to such an extent that, like, I just don't see what the point is of sending money to Ukraine. And like, this money is being sent overnight, but we can't sign off on any project internally because of all of the internal red tape that we have. I don't understand. I just don't understand. Like, we can't finance a pipeline. We can't finance a high-speed rail. Everything that we have to do internally takes a decade. to get sign offs on. Natives can veto everything, but we can send $2.5 billion to Ukraine, but we can't use that money to support a very urgent matter like Canadian productivity or our internal trade barriers between the provinces, or supporting Canadian companies right now in this time when these tariffs are really hitting the economy hard in key sectors of our economy, even our defense readiness, our energy like you can literally go point by point through the Canadian economy, through the Canadian culture, in the landscape, and you'll at every corner you will find a place where you can invest $2.5 billion adequately in Canada. But we're just not doing that. It seems like we don't care. I don't really understand why. But let me read this article quickly a little bit. It goes, Prime Minister Mark Carney condemned the new Russian air attacks, announced additional economic assistance for Ukraine as he and the country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, stood side by side and spoke to reporters at a Halifax area airport. The two leaders embraced as Carney welcomed Zelensky to Canada. Zelensky touched down for a brief stop on his way to Florida for planned peace talks with U.S. President Donald Trump this weekend, which he called very important and very constructive. Russia attacked Ukraine's capital with missiles and drones on Saturday, killing at least one. All right, whatever. Carney said Canada will provide a further $2.5 billion of economic assistance for Ukraine, noting the money will help unlock financing from other organizations, including the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, for reconstruction. The barbarism that we saw overnight, the attack on Kiev, shows just how important it is that we stand with Ukraine. Like, so this right here, guys, like, we're sending money, $2.5 billion to Ukraine for rebuilding the country. The conflict is still going. The conflict is still going. What are they going to rebuild? How? Like, why would you send money for a reconstruction project when there's still a conflict going on? And it's not like just like a light conflict. It's not just a couple people with guns just shooting each other. There's like, the Russians are shooting like 10,000 shells a day. Like 155 millimeter shells a day. Like, it's insane. Like, it's widespread devastation. Like, why would you give the money now for a credit rating? It literally makes no sense. Give it to them in a year when the conflict's over, whenever the conflict finishes. Why give it now? Like, the other thing is, the Ukrainian government's been known for corruption. Like, before the conflict began, Ukraine was literally considered the most corrupt country in Europe. This was pre-war Ukraine. It had its own oligarchy, obviously, who were padding their own pockets. They had deals going on with the government. This is documented. Like, they were significantly worse than Russia when it came to corruption. And we don't think that the wartime Ukraine isn't more corrupt than the pre-war Ukraine. That is extremely naive thinking. And any large and fast money flows into a wartime environment, especially in a country like Ukraine, create elevated graft risk. Like, what are the checks and balances? How are you supposed to assure that the money you're sending is going to go where it's going to go? You know? And the US right now is actually actively doing an audit on their own financial materials that they've sent in all of the war stuffs. Because there's been stories that they've been reselling some of the armaments to like drug cartels, like to the Mexican ones. So I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. Like, I feel for Ukraine and Ukrainians, more so for Ukrainians than for the country itself. Like, that's devastating, right? Having your country go through that, everybody's lost somebody. Like, there's like a million plus dead Ukrainians. It's insane, right? So like, I can't even fathom, the tragedy of the Ukrainian people, right? But that's like one thing. Like, if you want to take the moral high ground as Canada, that's what every Canadian government always talks about. How Canada is a very moral country, how we always do what's right for the people. We're extremely humanitarian, and Canadians actually believe that. Right? And I genuinely think that most Canadians are. I think that the vast majority of Canadians actually are extremely morally up there. Like, they have a high moral compass. They're very humanitarian. I actually believe that. But I don't really think that about the Canadian government. And one of the reasons is exactly this. This conflict has been going on for so long. Ukraine as a nation had a population of 40 million people. 40 million. Before the conflict started, right? Before the SMO was announced. 40 million. Right now, the standing population is 18. Okay? So that's, you can minus the 5 million people that live in that conflict area, like the Donbass and Zaporozhye and whatever, the other regions, Kherson. There's like 5 million people there. So you deduct that, you got 35 million people left. So that's like, you have at least like 10 million people that have left. They've pieced out of the country. They've just said goodbye to Ukraine. And Canada hasn't had a special refugee policy for Ukrainians. Why? I saw an article the other day that Canada made a special wartime refugee policy for Sudanese people, because there's a civil war in Sudan that's been going on for the last 2 years. So we can make a special case to be made for Sudan, a country that's been under sanctions, like global sanctions, like basically by everybody forever, right? But we can't have a refugee policy for Ukrainians. Mind you, extremely educated people, amazing software developers, amazing tech people. Why wouldn't we take in hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and actually help them get back on their feet and live normal lives and integrate into Canada? I think that would be the best way for us to help anybody. And then these Ukrainians, they can give back to their homeland whenever they want by sending money back home to their family, whoever stayed behind. That's usually the way it goes. We're giving money to a government that's known for corruption. Like, it's stupid. It literally doesn't make sense. But on the other side, you have Canada being a part of this coalition of the willing, right? And Carney's mentioned this already a couple times. We're a part of this coalition of the coalition of the willing is a group of European countries that are standing together because the US doesn't want to move in militarily. So it's a bunch of European countries that have no backbone. The only one that's in it that actually has some backbone is Poland. But Poland has already said that they will not send troops to fight the Russians. So, like, who's going to do it? France? So you have in this coalition of the willing, just so you guys know, just to give you a quick rundown of who's in this. You have France, whose military is only known for running expeditionary campaigns in Africa in its former colonies. One of which in Mali, they've just been kicked out, and in Niger. Germany's economy is collapsing completely. They still have World War II military caps on the size of the military that they're allowed to have. Italy hasn't had a serious military since World War II. Poland, I mentioned. The Netherlands, what kind of military does the Netherlands have? Or Denmark? for that matter. So all of these countries, Sweden and Finland are also in there, but all of these countries, like, they're not going to go to war with Russia. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's no way that they're going to actually go to war with Russia. And the thing is, this coalition of the willing, it's outside of the framework of NATO, right? So it's not a NATO alliance. All of the countries within it are NATO members, but it's not a NATO alliance. So Article 5 isn't going to be triggered if some conflict actually happens. And the whole point of this coalition of the willing is you have butthurt Emmanuel Macron, who and Keir Starmer, who's not even an elected politician in the UK, mind you, who are butthurt because they have no influence on anything anymore. Trying to give an FU to Donald Trump because he said the US isn't going to be setting boots on the ground into this conflict, number one. Number two, this is also a European problem, and none of you guys are actually fulfilling your 2% quota. So why don't you guys actually fulfill your 2% quota and you deal with this problem in Europe on your own? And now Canada is going in. Why is Canada going in? The only reason why I can see Canada wanting to be a part of the coalition of the willing in case of some kind of conflict happens in Europe is because of the UK. It's because we're still tied to the hip to the UK. You know, God save the king, all of that garbage. It's a bunch of BS, guys. It's just a bunch of BS. We're just throwing money that we don't have into more corrupt hands than exist in Canada. And Canada has a very strong, you can make a case that Canada has some decent corruption going on in it. And who's going to be accountable? How does Canada verify where all of this money goes and what the outcomes are going to be that it buys? We're giving them money to have in their bank, in the treasury, so that they can be creditworthy to take money out from the World Bank and the IMF. What is this? Where is the accountability behind this? How do you know that this money is not going to be spent on something stupid? Mind you, he stopped in Canada before he was going to go to Mar-a-Lago to speak with Trump in Florida. So what? He came to Canada to get a pat on the back, to get some support, and then, I'm going to go give it to Trump. Okay. Guys, this whole conflict in Ukraine, it's going to be resolved by two parties. It's going to be resolved by Russia and by the US. Everybody else is just noise. And we are funding noise. We are literally funding noise. This is the way I see it, guys. Support for Ukraine, it cannot be a substitute for a serious Canadian strategy. A country that is uncompetitive, fiscally stretched, and strategically unclear cannot project strength abroad for long, even at all. If Ottawa wants Canadians to back these commitments, it has to show discipline, transparency, and a clear end state, and not moral slogans and blank checks. Because foreign policy built on symbolism instead of capacity doesn't defend democracy. It slowly hollows it out at home. This is all I have for us today, guys. Like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and La Cabot. Kick your ass all hockey season.